It all broke 9 minutes before the New York Stock Exchange opened. The charts on the wall of his penthouse trembled like a carpet of light, and the price of Argosphere shares was already accelerating to a new record. Ethan Morales, the son of an El Paso auto mechanic turned symbol of the American dream, was slowly tying his black tie. His own tired face reflected in the glass. His phone vibrated. An unsigned message, 3 PDFs, a line of text that read, "You know what this is? It's all over today." He opened the first document, an audit report with a seal he'd never seen before. The second was internal correspondence about correcting user telemetry for growth. The third was a scan of an old contract with a small Austin company that said in black and white, the core of the Argosphere algorithm was licensed temporarily until full payment was received. The payment never came. "It's a fake," he whispered, but his voice was treacherously trembling. A second later, the morning news cut through the silence. Argosphere fraud documents leaked, SEC investigation underway, comments awaited. The cameras under the building were already set up like a battery. Ethan felt the dry taste of panic. Warmth in his chest, cold ice in his temples. "We didn't steal," he told himself. "We improved. We saved millions from fraud. We—" The phone flashed again. "Either you come out and tell the truth, or I'll speak for you," the unknown person wrote. He called Mark, the CFO. Silence. Then a short, "Not on the phone." The lawyer, Alexa, was writing long blocks. "Calm down. This is manipulation. Hold your ground. Don't admit anything." And in his head, meanwhile, another voice, much older, was burning. His father over the pit in the garage, his hands in grease. "Son, if the screw is only turned half a turn, it will still fly out. And the flight is no one's fault but you." Ethan went to the panoramic window. The city was roaring like the ocean in a storm. He took off his tie and laid it on the table like a white flag. "I built an empire," he thought. "Now I have to choose what to protect, the people in it or the legend about myself." In the mirror, he suddenly saw not the CEO of the year, but a boy in cheap sneakers, hiding a scholarship check in the sole so that it wouldn't be stolen in the dormitory. "Okay," he said into the void. "If this is a war, let it begin. But I need to know who I'm fighting." He pressed the unknown number that had sent the files. The call was answered on the second ring, a soft female breath, and a voice that made the skin prickle with cold. "Hello, Ethan. Remember me? Who are you? The one you once promised not to take more than you give back. The one you said, 'We'll do it honestly.'" He was silent. "My name is Sarah Lee, and I worked for that little company in Austin. You promised." The screen flickered on and off like a heart that had forgotten its rhythm. Ethan felt the floor sag beneath his feet over and over again. When the call ended, he smiled as if he'd crushed a blade with his teeth. "Okay, Sarah, then listen. I'll either explain everything honestly or I'll disappear. There's no third option." And the first act ended not with an explosion of triumph, but with a viscous silence in which truth and fear stood opposite each other, like boxers under the roar of the arena. The day was split into endless calls, meetings, live broadcasts, and messages from lawyers. The stock market opened and the chart plummeted like an elevator with its cables cut. CNBC, Bloomberg, the Twitter crowd savoring the fall of titans. A former partner, Nick Delaney, suddenly came to life in the media as someone who had always had questions about Morales' methods. That evening, the Attorney General's office announced a preliminary review of user data, and 2 senators wrote an open letter. Argosphere is a threat to Americans' privacy. It seemed that the universe he was designing was actually a glass box where he was just a fish beating against invisible walls. "You know," Mark said quietly, clutching his cup, "we couldn't stop the growth. Everyone demanded it. Investors, the market, you." "I demanded transparency," Ethan snapped. "You demanded miracles." Mark looked up. "And miracles always pay someone's debt." Someone had published bits of correspondence overnight, Ethan's orders to fix telemetry, and speed up the download at any cost. The agenda at internal meetings now read like a confession. The lawyer would shout, "This is taken out of context." But no one heard the context when the headlines were already written. Investors called not to talk, to threaten. In the top chat, someone had thrown a rock. Maybe the CEO should take a vacation. And the rock instantly became an avalanche. That same day, Ethan received another file. Surveillance video from a decade ago. The two of them in a cramped Austin office. He young, hungry, sparkling eyes. Across from him was a girl with short hair named Sarah. "We need those 6 months," he said then. "We'll raise the round and pay it off. Just don't cut off our names," she said. "Just don't take away our right to be called co-authors. I promise." At the end of the clip, he shakes her hand. After the round, her name disappears from the footnotes like a song in the rain. He didn't remember exactly how it happened. A chain of decisions that seemed like little things until they formed into a razor's edge. When his PR manager put the folder with the defense narrative on his desk that evening, Ethan flipped through it and felt sick. There was another reality. He was the savior of innovation. Sarah was the offended small contractor. The Austin firm was a service provider without IP. It was clean, comfortable, convincing, and completely fake. "If we go this way," Alexa said, "you'll survive. And if we don't, you'll be crushed. Reputationally, financially, legally." "And what about your soul?" he asked suddenly. She fell silent, like an accounting department that doesn't summarize such lines. That night, for the first time in years, Ethan drove around the city alone, without a driver, just circling the Hudson, listening to raucous jazz and his heart nearly beating out the door. He realized he was losing everything. Company, friends, the ability to call his mother without lying. And for the first time in a long time, the hope that had once warmed him like a lamp above his desk. At the Washington Bridge, he stopped, stepped out into the night air, and called the person he hadn't called in 10 years. "Leanne," he said, "I wasn't the man you dreamed I would be. But if you still have even 1% of faith in me, tell me what to do." There was a long silence on the phone. Then her voice, sober and warm. "Start with the truth. Even if the truth doesn't bring me back. Bring yourself back." Morning greeted him with a message from the board of directors. CEO's powers removed, immediate. He signed it, and for a moment he felt relief that hurt like a ring being removed from chafed skin. The day after his resignation was as empty as a warehouse after a sale. The city continued to live. Coffee shops revving up their espresso machines, delivery people rolling around on their bikes, cats basking in the sun on windowsills, all of which ironically mocked the fact that his empire had fallen without a shot being fired. Ethan didn't go to the office or the lawyers. He flew to Austin. The office at Sarah's former company had long since become a co-working space, but the receptionist knew her name. "She works in the school's robotics lab. Friday is open to parents," he was told. In the gym, among the tables with sensors and wires, he saw a woman with short hair, almost the same as in that video, only her eyes had become deeper and her smiles were more stingy. A girl with a Fox backpack was laughing next to her. "I was expecting you to show up," Sarah said, not raising an eyebrow. He faltered. "I didn't come to make excuses. I came to listen." They sat down on a bench under the school's oak tree. Sarah pulled a thin folder from her bag. "These are copies of our code. Proof that the kernel was ours. It was a matter of justice for me then, a matter of security now. Your system is on government contracts now. A lapse in ethics becomes a risk to people." "I know," he whispered. "I don't want your money, Ethan. Money is just noise. I want you to call things by their proper names. Take away my credit and the threat will be less. Give me back my name and maybe those kids will learn not just how to do something but why." The girl with the backpack ran over and hugged Sarah. "This is May," she said quietly. "My daughter. Her father left when I refused to sign an NDA that would erase me from history. I chose myself. The price was high." Ethan took a deep breath, as if it were the first time. "I betrayed you then," he said. "Not by direct order, but by allowing others to do the dirty work for my bright facade. That's betrayal too." Sarah nodded. "All big lies are made up of little permissions. They talked until dusk. Sarah handed him the flash drive as parting words. It's not just code. It's correspondence you haven't seen. The names of people who miraculously plugged the holes. This forbidden knowledge, Ethan. You either clean up with it or burn. Be careful with the flame. At the hotel, he plugged in the flash drive. The files were named casually, minutes_2016_n, memo_privacy, Dil_Delani. And inside were the mechanics of a system that replaces conscience with procedures. There was a letter from Nick Delani to the lawyers. If Lee speaks up, we'll write it all off as subcontracting and negligence. Let Morales be a visionary beyond the details. He'll get it. There were signs with telemetry corrections, disguising errors as optimization. There was his own signature under the board minutes. Agreed. And most importantly, there was the name of a boy from his hometown, Luis Ortiz, whom he once took on as an intern. It turns out that Luis had written to Alexia, "We're turning people into graphs. Where's the line?" And the answer was, "The line is where the SEC doesn't ask." Ethan pressed his forehead against the cold window pane. I built a ship, he thought, and taught it not to see icebergs. In the mirror was neither a monster nor a saint, but a man who had fallen from the heights of his own myth. And it was into this void that a spark suddenly fell. Liana wrote briefly, "I am with you, if you go to the end." And it was like a forbidden light in the darkness. Not forgiveness, but a guide. He returned to New York without warning anyone. The press center where he had once shown off new products to thunderous applause was now silent. Ethan took the stage, turned on the microphone and cameras. The stream had collected tens of thousands in minutes, ravenous curiosity and quiet expectations. He had no speech, only the truth that had been long overdue. "My name is Ethan Morales," he began, "and I am not a victim of a conspiracy. I am its architect, though not alone. I signed protocols that disguised technological errors as optimization. I allowed the names of those who were with me at the launch to be erased. I did not steal the codes myself. I had them stolen for my success. It was my weakness disguised as a vision." The room froze. He felt a current of cold and heat run down his back at the same time. "I have the documents. I am handing them over to the journalists and investigators. And I ask for two things. The first is to return the credit to those we owe it to. The second is to remove my name from the immunity function. No visionary should be above the law. You understand that this is suicide?" Alexa whispered from the front row. "Maybe," he answered into the microphone. "But living is not continuing the biography. Sometimes it is stopping it in time." He named Sarah Lee and the small company from Austin. He named Luis Ortiz and those who pressed for corrections. Not as revenge, but as a return to the reality of names. After the statement, a storm began. Journalists shouted questions, phones burned. Lawyers tried to interrupt the broadcast. But it had already escaped into the world like air from a broken porthole. That same evening, Nick Delaney went on the channel and called Ethan a traitor to the team. In response, Ethan sent reporters a correspondence from a flash drive. Seconds later, the information war became real. The board of directors declared deep sadness and filed a lawsuit against their former CEO. The SEC officially opened proceedings. The stock fell even lower, touching the plinth. Liana arrived not with flowers, but with a thermos of coffee. "This is madness," she said. "But sometimes madness is the only way to cure lies." "I will lose everything," he replied. "No," she touched his cheek. "You have already lost. Now you are fighting to make the loss make sense." At night, when the building was empty, a woman with short hair and a girl with a fox backpack remained in the lobby. Sarah approached him not as a winner, but as someone who had survived a long winter. "That was right," she said. "Right, it's not always pretty." May smiled uncertainly. "Mom says honesty is like math. It doesn't work right away. But without it, everything breaks down." "Wise mom," Ethan replied, and for the first time in many months, he felt that the air smelled of rain, not ashes. The lawsuits dragged on for months. His houses were sold, his accounts were capped, his newspaper names were no longer being taken over, they were dry. He rented a small apartment above a Brooklyn workshop that smelled of wood and iron. In the mornings, he would deliver coffee to former Argosphere engineers who were now launching independent projects. And he would laugh when they called him a mentor without a company. He would record lectures to high school students on data ethics, and in every classroom there would be that one look, hungry like his own, and then Ethan would feel something in the world coming back to its place. Sarah started a foundation with him, not for bleaching but for paying back the loan, to support small labs where kids are taught to ask why before they press run. At the first board of trustees meeting, Ethan said, "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for permission to work alongside." Sarah nodded. Forgiveness is not a door that someone opens for you. It is a road that you build with every step. Walk. One evening he was walking home and saw a guy on the street who was taking apart an old smartphone. "Why are you cutting it up?" Ethan asked. "I want to make a camera for a telescope out of it. To look at the satellites, at the stars. The stars don't see us as rich or poor." Ethan said, "They see trajectories. And if the trajectory is a mistake, then we correct the course, and we fly on." At night, looking out the window, he smiled at the sky. He knew. Once his name was on the posters as a symbol of victory. Now it was wrinkled and washed like a work shirt. And, perhaps, in this form it was ready for real work. Can you be rich and honest? You can, if wealth is not measured only by the commas in the bank, but by the ability to lose when the truth demands it. Which is more important, truth or success? The question is tricky, because without the truth, success is no more than a lighted sign above a closed store. Can you buy back the past? No, you don't buy it. You live it again, openly, loudly, with names, with numbers, with pain, and let others see exactly where you went wrong. Ethan put a small tie on the table, the same black one he had worn since the first day he fell. He had tied it not for the stock market, but for the school auditorium where he would speak to teenagers about code and conscience the next day. The American dream, he thought, is not about never falling. It's about not lying about falling, and lifting others up when you get up yourself. He turned off the light. The workshop rumbled behind the wall. Cold constellations floated outside the window. A message from Liana. "I'm here." His answer was brief. "Me too." And perhaps it was in this quiet exchange that there was a new beginning that needed no headlines. Because sometimes the richest person is the one who can finally live without fear that someone will turn off the light and see the truth. He had already turned it on himself, and he wasn't going to turn it off.